What are some of your memories from Bully Beatdown?
Fully Beatdown. What a great show, man.
Yeah. What up, Fightful fam? Shaquille Majuri here. And you know who this man is. He's got a Hakuna Matata mug, but if you're in the cage with him, you should be very worried. It's Eddie Alvarez. How are you, sir?
Excellent, man.
Good.
What's the opposite of Hakuna Matata? How can we say it backwards?
Yeah, you figure it out by the end of the interview. We'll do it. Now, listen, before we get into anything fight related, the only time I've ever asked you anything was during like a phone or press conference for one championship a year or two ago. But since I have you one-on-one, since we're face-to-face, I just want to take a moment and gush about the greatest fight walkout song of all time, which is Victory by Puff Daddy, Notorious B.I.G., Busta Rhymes. That is like my childhood dream, was like walk through a WWE entrance or a boxing entrance or fight entrance to that song. Why is that such a great walkout song?
I mean, victory sums it up, right? I mean, this is why we kind of, there's so much leaning on your shoulders when you're going into a fight. You put your heart, your soul, put your family aside. You get so one track minded.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it all comes to one night and one victory, and, the song in itself, it gives me chills every time I come out. It's what it's all about.
Then I love, like, you got that like slow build at first with Puff Daddy, and then when B.I.G. comes in, it's like game time.
Yeah, and East Coast too, You gotta
Yes,
go big.
for sure. Now, you mentioned something, so I'm actually quite curious about that. You talk about how, when it comes to the fight game, there's a pocket of time where you got to put your family aside and focus on the sole singular kind of selfish pursuit, which is just kind of the nature of the game. And someone like Justin Gaethje, your past opponent, he's held off on families and relationships because he wants to dedicate his sole focus to this. What is your advice to some younger fighters who are just now having kids, who are starting to raise a family and are trying to figure out how to balance their career and their personal life?
You know what? Everybody's motivated differently. I didn't have much of a choice. I was 20 and I had my first child. So I think I would say to a young kid who has a choice, I would more tell them to hold off,
Mm-hmm.
only because you marry the game. You say you can't really have other commitments other than fighting if you want to reach your potential and do as best as possible. Otherwise, you're just going to have a girlfriend that you're always ignoring, kids that you're going to semi-neglect. It's very difficult to obsess about fighting and give fighting all that it needs to be successful with a family and kids and other responsibilities. So I would tell the younger generation to marry the game. Don't get yourself involved in too many responsibilities that could take away from your fullest potential. But for myself, I don't want to say I'm an expert at balancing anything, because I get oblivious to everything around me when I obsess about a goal or a task. But I got lucky. I had a really, really good, I married my best friend, and I had a good wife and a good partner.
For sure. Has this pandemic been like a good chance for you to dedicate some more time to the family?
Awesome. Yeah. I knew that no one was able to call me to fight. I wasn't able to fly. I knew for the first time in 16 years, nobody's calling me to fight or wanting me to do anything, or it was uneasy at first, because I'm just so used to getting that call and being on edge and having to get ready. But once I realized, hey, no one's calling you, no one's out to get you, no one's coming after you. So it allowed me for the first time in a long time to relax a little bit and just be at home with my family, with my kids, and enjoy each other.
On the note of a potential fight, is there, I know you recently talked to South China Morning Post. Is there any update on that front? timeline opponent? Is it going to be in the U.S.? Because that's what you told them.
I'm trying to get one. I'm trying to get an update this week.
Mm-hmm.
Borders get closed in Asia and all over the world. It's very uncertain of what's going to happen, and there's not a lot of predictability in it. So all I'm hearing is for me to be ready. I'd like to be ready in November, sometime in November, and hopefully here in the United States, because I don't think Americans could still fly internationally. So I'm hoping we can make something work out, get creative, and then get a card here somewhere in the United States.
So there's been some discussion with one about a potential U.S. event.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's super cool. It'd be nice to see you over on this. I mean, I'm in Canada, but close enough. And before we go any farther, I just realized, possibly with the exception of Stephen Thompson, I think this is you are the first person I've interviewed who's got a spot on the wall behind me. So.
Not the greatest night on earth, but it's cool that I'm on that poster.
Yeah. I mean, I understand, but it truly is a historic card, even before the fight, right? So
it was.
That's
really
a magical
was.
place to be. UFC, New York, Madison Square Garden, triple headliner. Like, it doesn't get any bigger than that. I saw you post on Instagram some training with Sean Brady. How big of a deal is Sean Brady? Because Paul Felder was going absolutely crazy for the man on the UFC Vegas 8 broadcast.
Sean's a big deal. I rarely make a call to Dana White and say, I have Dana's number and I can, but I rarely say, hey, you really gotta sign this guy, because if you don't, you'd be missing out. So like it was a year or two ago, I called him, and Sean represents Philadelphia, represents our city, incredible. He wants it. He put the work in. He deserves everything he's getting, but he's a hell of a problem. And you guys will see it. I said on my Twitter not too long ago, 2 years or less, I could see a belt around his waist. He's a problem for anyone in that division.
Well, man, and he proved it. Crazy second round guillotine choke over Christian Aguilera, chokes him out. Do you remember how
he gets everyone with that? And that's just a testament to how strong he is. It's one arm, and it's something that he gets everyone with.
Insane. Do you remember how that conversation with Dana went?
I think they were coming to Philly. They were coming to Philly. I left the UFC. I was no longer with the UFC. And I remember I was like a little bit sad that I couldn't fight in Philly. And I'm like, I seen the card, and I seen that no one from Philadelphia was on the card. No one at all. I think Gaethje and Barboza were headlining it. And I'm like, this would be like the worst thing ever in our city's history, is for, finally the event gets here after years of trying to get it there. Finally it gets there, and then nobody on Philadelphia is there to represent our city. So I called him and said, we have the perfect guy. And he, it was pretty quick conversation.
Now, and we don't have to go there. It's totally up to you. But I was just thinking about what you said about the poster, and I was wondering if I could ask you, like, where does that Conor McGregor fight sit for you at this stage in your life? Like, is it in the past? Is it still something that bothers you? There's no real wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious.
I'll never be okay with that. I'm a competitor. I'm a competitor, and I know what I'm capable of, and that'll never be like, oh, I'd be lying if I said to someone, oh, it's in the past, it's over with. Sucks. I'll never be okay with that. And anybody at my level, and anybody who wants to compete at a high level and put their life into the sport, they won't be okay with a loss like that. Will not settle. But yeah, I've forgiven myself, and I know in order to move on and compete at the highest level, kind of got to put it to bed. And but it's something that'll drive me, that I'll have in my back pocket, that'll drive me, like sort of one of them things like never again type situations, you know what I mean? So it is what it is. I try to make sense of it, and there's no sense to be made. I fist fight for a living, and fist fighting is the most unpredictable sport in the world. There is no other sport that's more uncertain than what we do.
For sure.
So I live in the realm of uncertainty, and most of the time I come out on top. Some nights aren't your best, so that's just what I have to kind of settle with.
Okay, well, I appreciate you talking to me about that a little bit. You are without a doubt the most violent man on this planet, but I feel like two people who cut pretty close are Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier. That matchup is being worked on right now. What are your thoughts on those two guys fighting?
Oh, it's an incredible matchup. That's actually a really good matchup. I like that. I think that's a lot closer matchup. When I thought about the Gaethje Ferguson fight, immediately it was not a question that I knew Justin would beat him. But this matchup's a little more unique just because I feel like Tony has the ability to get Dustin down, and I didn't think Dustin had the ability to get Gaethje down if he wanted to. So that creates a whole nother problem in that matchup. I'd have to kind of dig into it and look at some video to see where I would lie. But I would think if it stayed on the feet, Dustin would chip him up pretty good boxing.
Okay. And, you've done some interviews recently, and you've covered most of the important topics, Christian Lee, your next fight, etc. So I'd love to just, as we wrap up, look in the past a little bit. What are some of your memories from Bully Beatdown?
Bully Beatdown. What a great show, man.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about something that was made for the internet.
Seriously.
That show should be back. That show would get incredible, traffic if it was made today. I would love to do it today. But I just remember that show. I was in the trailer, and the producers come back and they say, hey, two things. You can't pick the guy up and slam him really hard because they already had an episode where one of the fighters did that and they got into some trouble because the guy popped his rib or something like that. So they said, please don't pick him up real high and slam them really hard, and don't kick him in the head. So there are only two rules. Otherwise, go whoop up on them. Do whatever you want to do. We don't feel any sort of way to hold you guys back other than don't slam him really hard, don't kick him in the head. And I remember scrolling through my phone, and I was scrolling top 10 coolest submissions because I want it to be good on the show. I wanted my showcase on that show to be like spectacular. So I was looking at the coolest submissions I could do, and I was telling my corner, don't let me punch because I broke my hand. I fought Josh Neer like 2 weeks before the fight, and my hand was a little broken. So I just kicked for my episode.
I remember. Yeah.
I just remember going out of the shower going, whoever it is, just don't let me punch. And I want to pull off these five.
I seem to recall it was a different submission each time, right?
Yeah. I was trying to get the top five.
Love it. If I read correctly, it said that you had, coming out of high school, you had some partial wrestling scholarships for college, and you instead chose to go the martial arts route. Especially back then, the UFC wasn't what it is today. What sort of prompted you to not take those scholarships and instead go the MMA route?
It was my SATs were terrible. My SATs were not good. So I didn't like school. When I went to school, when I was done high school and I felt like high school is like, you have to do high school. I felt that way. So I did it, but I felt like I could breathe when I got out. I'm like, I never want to do homework again. I never want to read again. If I'm not interested in a subject and I don't have to do it, then I don't want to do it. So that's just how I felt about school. So when it came to volunteering to do another 4 years of school, I'm like, if I don't have to do it, I'm not doing it. And I didn't have my parents didn't push it. I didn't have people behind me kind of pushing a college education, so I didn't do it. I went right to working.
Yeah, unfortunately, the high school system is very geared towards one specific kind of learning and doesn't leave
Yeah.
much room for anything else. And last thing, I read that it was your dad who you started training boxing under your dad around 8 years old, and then you started wrestling at 11. What does combat sports mean to your family, whether it's your kids or your dad?
My grandpa, I think he fought in the Pan American Games boxing.
Wow.
He boxed at a high level. I believe got involved in drugs or whatnot, and then fell off. And my dad would always kind of growing up would always teach me how to fight, show me how to fight, kind of remind me of like my family's history and that we're fighters. I don't even know if it was true, but that's what he would tell me. And he just filled me up with a bunch of confidence. And I was inspired by, like, at that time, Karate Kid was on, Rocky was big, Ninja Turtles were huge. Everything involved around martial arts and fighting was really kind of trending at that time for me as a kid. So I love to train. I love to fight. I love to kind of compete and combat. And I went to a boxing gym, and the rest was history. My dad would always do stuff with me in the living room, punching, teaching me how to turn my hips and punch properly. But as a kid, I just always liked to fight, always. So that kind of, I think fighting kind of picked me. I didn't kind of pick it.
Yeah, I mean, well, you've been a champion everywhere you've been, so those roots clearly run deep. Eddie, I want to thank you so much for your time. You're a legend. You still got some things left to accomplish in your career, so I wish you the best of luck, and I know fans are super excited to see you compete again soon.
Fight for